You are tuned in to What Up Baltimore online radio. Please note that the views and opinions expressed are of the host and not of Lady J Media. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Hey, how you doing? Oh, I can't complain, but I'm still a man. A black man, I am. I live in a land I built things by hand. Our families were taken, our identities mistaken. Hundreds of years we shed many tears. Although it appears that our culture doesn't respect the tradition we left. And the wisdom is stolen from the plates our linoleum. Floors from the windows to the walls, till the sweat drips in my balls. I still can't complain that all my kids got things from the wall. They were just 2 feet tall, but they keep me going. My life was just gold. It's like I was chosen and there's no
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Spitfire Poetry Shutdown. I am your host, John Hansboro. It is Monday, November 29th, 2021. I know you guys normally see me on Wednesdays, but we got a special show tonight on Monday night. We have a poet by the name of Analysis. Now, before I get to him, I just want to read a little bit about this, about Analysis. I've been doing some research on this brother. He's a veteran of various forms of public speaking. Analysis is a spoken word poet and rad minister, bookseller, educator, consultant, soccer addict, and lover of justice and human rights. He's featured and spotlighted at venues across New England and in the Mid-Atlantic during the pandemic. The world, a background in civil rights and economic justice, anti-apartheid and anti-racist organization, secondary education, justice theory and ministry, and international travel manifests itself in his poetry, as does a love of radical history. Family and people in general. Studied public communications at the American University and holds a master's in divinity degree. He is also a analyst is a host at Red Emma's bookstore. I love that bookstore. At Red Emma's bookstore, Mother Earth Poetry Vibe is a quarterly open mic and feature venue of the theme Peace, Justice, Poetry that takes place at Red Emma's Coffee House in Baltimore, and a member of Simply Poetic Entertainment and Restoration Village Arts. He is the author of Somewhere Through the Haze, a short collection of poems and a variety of justice and human rights topics, and the album A Couple Thousand Years Later. I bring to you Analyst the Poet. How are you doing, brother?
Hey, what's up, bro? It's good to be on here. It's an honor to be on here. I've got to fill in one crucial piece of my bio that is probably too long and I should cut it down, but you represented, you shouted out my undergrad alma mater, American University, AU Eagles, especially Ebony Eagles. What's up? But there's a group of people who are going to lean on me. They're not going to be mad at you. They're going to be mad at me.
Right.
If you don't say that the Master of Divinity is from Howard University.
Master of Divinity. HU in the house.
You know how else Howard people, they weren't going to let me off the hook if Howard wasn't shouted out. So I had to straighten that out for my own behind, not yours,
I hear you. Sounds good, man. You have quite the extensive bio and resume, man. Like I first saw you, Analyst, about maybe 2 or 3 years ago. My wife just stumbled onto Red Emma's actually. And it was an open mic going on that night. And that's where I saw you and a couple other poets that I've been following lately. And I was blown away, man. I like the atmosphere in there. It was just, you could just feel the vibe in the room. You know what I mean?
I'm trying to think because your beloved Shalonda is someone who I've had an opportunity to connect with through Maurice Carroll, and who produced 2 of the tracks on on my album, and he brought Shalonda in for what are some beautiful vocals on a piece called Nan. And but now that you say that, in terms of y'all having come to the Vibe a couple of years ago, I'm wondering if we met there, because I was thinking that, you know, this is my first interaction with Shalonda, but it's quite possible that we met, you know, at the venue maybe a couple of years ago. And one way or the other, I appreciate the fact that you all had a chance to come and see it. And you know, that just means a lot to me, especially since if you look at the past 5-6 years or so, let's just say that arbitrarily, it's been a hard time for venues. A lot of long-standing venues. You've seen it in Baltimore. You know, you've seen many of the old venues that were stronghold spoken word venues, let's say 10 years ago, that are no longer functioning. And so it hasn't been an easy time in Maryland, DC, Philly, what have you, in terms of being able to sustain poetry venues. So I appreciate the fact that Red Emma's Mother Earth Poetry Vibe has been able to continue. And I certainly appreciate everybody who has visited or been a part of that. I should also say that I go by analysis is one of those twisty things that is it analyst? Is it analysis? Is it analytical? What the hell is it?
Man, well, I definitely enjoyed it when I was there. I was inspired, man. I really was.
I'm so glad.
How long have you been doing spoken word and poetry?
I'd say maybe about this is 2021, maybe 13 years or so.
Okay.
So you know, you can calculate jumping off all the gray hair that I already had gray hair by the time I got into poetry. I came into it a lot later in life than most poets. You know, many will tell you of writing from childhood or teen years or from their young adult years. And I didn't really fall into it until I was already in my 40s. And it's fascinating when I look back and realize that I did not get into it earlier. I've always loved words. I come, as my bio says, out of a background of different types of public speaking. And it really interests me that I didn't actually fall into poetry earlier than I did. And I got into it when I happened to have been living in New Haven, Connecticut for a few years. I had just moved there. You know, you move to a new town, you want to meet people and network. And I just happened to have started hanging out at some coffee houses and got to some spoken word venues. Shout out to my dear brother in New Haven, Bobby Dawn. A couple of his venues were some of the first poetry venues, were really the first poetry venues that I started hitting. And the bug just bit, man. Something just snapped because of the welcome that I received and the encouragement to get up on the mic, even though I was like, get up on the mic and do what? With what? You know? And they said, no, go on up there. And but it just something snapped, and I fell in love with the art form and wanted to pursue it and try to do some things with it. And yeah, it really has melded naturally with justice efforts, with ministry, with educational things, all kinds of, it folds naturally into those things. And that's one of the things I really like about doing it.
It's, you know, I was reading up on you and how you love to talk about civil rights and things like that. What actually is what pushes you to write poetry? Like, what pushed you to start writing, other than when you moved to Connecticut?
Well, in terms of the subject matter, I think you're getting that. In terms of why do I write what I write?
Right.
It really is a matter of trying to artistically address the struggle, capital S, in the overall sense of that word, and the things about the struggle and the things that we need to be doing and continually addressing and what have you. Now, obviously, that's a whole range of things, right? We're talking about economic justice. We're talking about pushing back against the criminal injustice system, as I call it. We're talking about the evil that is the United States imperialism and foreign policy, on that, et cetera, you know, all of the issues, if you will, all of the isms. And so coming from that base of material, there are some things that either I have been involved with or, had been a part of organizing around, or some things that just, bothered me and struck me. And I was like, you know what, this needs a piece. I need to get it off my chest.
Right.
A particular justice issue. So for instance, try to give a quick example. I had the opportunity to do some organizing for a brief time with a group called the Center for New Community out of Chicago. I had a chance to do organize in Ohio and Connecticut, pushing back against xenophobic, anti-immigrant groups and hate groups. And that was around the time that I started to get into poetry. So one of my earliest poems was a thing called Immigration Acrostic. It's very brief. I guess I should do it right quick. It's
go ahead, sure.
An acrostic poem. Some of your listeners will be familiar with is when you take perhaps the alphabet and line out your lines of your poem based off the letters of the alphabet, or you may take a word or name and line something out off of that. And this is called Immigration Acrostic. Asinine interjections of anti-immigrant hate create bathos to any expectation of intelligent thought coming from those who, in their own insecurities, denigrate those who cross oceans and cross burning deserts, having been excluded from all that mutual wealth, free trade agreements egregiously guaranteed. Greed runs rampant as big bosses make profits, while hypocritical descendants of immigrants clamor about an imagined invasion, their ignorance exceedingly ugly. Jokes are played on folks from around the world who anticipated kind and warm welcome to this land of the free. Labor underrewarded is the order of the day, manipulated by rulers of capital who capitalize off the need of poor folk and refugees to replenish their children's bellies or remit something home to stave off starvation. Prejudice is prescribed through parapets and prohibitive policies. Queries about how we might best welcome our new neighbors are deflected by restrictionists who reroute public thought with lies about how immigration supposedly steals from our surplus or sacks our social order. Those tainted by tat and tout English only is the only acceptable form of communication and undervalue ethnic studies which would enhance a healthy society. My people, void from your souls all such vitriol against those who arrive. White America is threatened in the minds of the haters, and xenophobic fear is what they will tempt you to. You, however, must remain wise to such lies and permit zero tolerance for hate against the newcomer in this place. So as I say, that's called Immigration Acrostic. Wow. And so that I just to give you an example of trying to use the art to relate to things that I had already been involved in or subjects that I already found important. And so, many of my poems come from that standpoint. We are human beings. So, we have the whole range of humanity in us. So not everything I write about or speak about, it has to do with a deep social political topic. Sometimes I'm just flirting. So sometimes I'm talking about, family or that type of thing. And there's a poem about my great grandmother. There's a poem about, like I say, just a little silliness and flirtatious stuff and what have you.
Your word,
legitimate love, what might be legitimately considered a love poem. So, we come from the range of humanity, but that's just kind of an example of what you're talking about in terms of the things that motivate me to write.
Your wordplay, brother, is absolutely incredible, man. You are you're definitely a deep poet, and you make the listener hang on to every single word so they can see what's coming next. You know what I mean?
I appreciate that.
Man, yeah, that was great. Okay, so wow. First, before we get into another poem, though, okay, talk to me about Somewhere Through the Haze. That's a collection of poems that you have, right? Is that available right now?
And it's a small booklet. It's only yay big, and it collects 8 justice and human rights related pieces. So the poem that you just heard, Immigration Acrostic, is one of those that's in this. You can get it within the U.S. You can get it from redemmas.org. That is the website for Red Emma's Bookstore Coffee House. So RED as in David, EM as in Mary, M as in Mary, AS.org. in many English-speaking countries. If you have any international listeners with you, and I hope we have some of our world family listening in many countries at lulu.com, LULU.com. I hope to make it more available in all countries down the road. But it's a collection of 8 of those justice and human rights pieces that we're talking about, and so it really expresses the primary essence of why I write and what I like to write about. And again, trying to use the art form to raise awareness, to raise critical analysis, if you will. And yeah, I hope people have a chance to check it out. Again, if you go to redemmas.org, certainly those of you who are in Baltimore ought to visit the store. But I hope that it can be used as a tool. See, I want people not just to enjoy my poetry. I want people to wrestle with it, to let the poetry push them, to put your critical analysis on it, to utilize it in settings, family, work, your place of worship, your group, your organizing. Find out ways in which you can use it to raise the consciousness and raise the critical analysis of other people. Take my poems, and if they are of any use in the efforts, in the struggle, capital S, then that is a blessing to me, and that's what I want.
It's absolutely wonderful analysis, man. I would love to hear another one. You can just go right ahead, because I know that people want to hear something else from me.
Well, I'll tell you what, we mentioned, as I say, what I call the criminal injustice system. And for those of you who study scripture, there's a passage in Lamentations 3rd chapter that talks about when human rights are perverted in the presence of the Most High, does not the Lord see it? And there's also in the New Testament, in Acts of the Apostles, a very famous story about Paul and Silas being in prison, and then the doors opening and them being released, and them coming free out of prison. And there was a conference a few years ago. There's an annual conference called Ecumenical Advocacy Days that I had a chance to participate in the worship services for a few years ago. And those were the 2 scriptures that year. It's an advocacy, kind of lobbying justice conference. And those were the 2 scriptures that year dealing with some criminal justice issues. And so this is called the selling of souls, and that's spelled with a C. However the camera is where you all are looking, but whatever the C is, I'm inverted here, but the selling of souls spelled with a C. The old folk used to say Paul and Silas bound in jail, sing God's praise both night and day. And I hope that Trump might blow me home to the New Jerusalem. I hope it does blow them home, although seized in the marketplace of human capital. But right now, all I hear trumpeted are blustering boasts about being tough on crime and misleading media made to maintain some manufactured war on drugs that keeps officials chasing the scream of those in need while ignoring their cries for help. Thus, cells swell. More dwell in them here in the land of liberty than anywhere else. Even the smallest or most repentant for of offenses could get you caught up in a maze of mandatory minimums. This mandates a story, at minimum of telling the truth, because this situation has many doing time, and time keeps on slipping into the future. We want to fly like an eagle. But all we see is the new Jim Crow in a societal cage with human rights perverted in the presence of the Most High. Human nights deserted, people missing, broken families cry, millions on the inside near forgotten. Do we ask why? Seems like folk could care less how they got there or if numbers die in deplorable conditions, their lamentations being met with lamentable lies. Oh, sure, the rulers speak pretty words about equal justice, but modify their verbs to contain no action. Their sentence structure is unbalanced, with a biased renoun that predicates a belief that people of color and poor whites are to be relegated to a subordinate clause. Pardon my grammar, but that ish just ain't right. And the only corrections I see are the glaring ones that need to be made to this criminal injustice system. Both public and privatized prisons are run like rental companies, with individuals treated as for storage. This arrangement might have you hauled away, but this ain't Mom's Attica. It's the sand quintessential squelching of souls, with no renaissance of freedom in Florence, more like a crucifixion of lives, an Angola 3 up on crosses of falsehood, fear, and greed. Even the Nazarene would catch the fulsome prison blues under these conditions. Imagine if the carpenter had to sing a song of stolen liberties. Countless commune in his name, yet act as if the least of these are mere unleavened, worth passing over. Take 2.2 million of the Creator's loved ones locked up in the U.S. Add them to the 21 million of God's children, many just children, carted around the world as chattel, driven by the trade in forced sex and labor, and you got gridlock on the road to any rights with nobody moving freely. Up next, human traffic and weather. Or not you choose to reroute your eyes around it, it's still there. Wonder why this absurdity is so out of control? Follow the money. The prison industrial isn't that complex when its context is clarified as corporate players monopolizing human beings like tokens after they land on go to jail. It's easier to figure when you factor in the foolishness of police districts blowing up their bookings and filling beds. See, this is slavery by any other name. Oh, wait now. The loophole in the 13th does call it that, doesn't it? Well, there it is. As easy as 1, 2, 3. The strikes you get before being struck out of the full roster of citizenship. Sent down to the minors, disenfranchised. You don't even get that many swings if you're the away team trying to play in the home park of the privileged. Hardworking folk forced to flee their forebears' farms due to falling prices fashioned by free trade agreements, or fleeing violence fueled by arms forged in northern factories and Faustian pacts between our federal and its nefarious friends. Thousands go through hell to get here only to arrive in hell. Surprised? Well, you won't hear tell of this too much. Our welcoming government quells this, trying to keep it on the slide. But now detention is a family affair, with everyday people rounded up together then torn apart. Parents and children made separate, but equal is the pain in their hearts. They were hoping this country would want them to stay, but they discovered that even here, not everybody is a star. For them, there's no hot fun in the summertime because they got iced. So while they're made to dance to the music of orchestrated racism, they look for allies to help take them higher. Question is, will we stand with them, doing everything we can so that their God-given dignity is respected and they can be themselves again? We are the ones who must make the earthquake. We are the trumpets that must make the walls shake with justice that opens doors and blows the captives home. Indeed, we might be the next captives. So either we lock arms with those on lockdown or our spirits languish. Our action is of seismic importance. We better not blow it. Again,
Absolutely.
that's called The Selling of Souls, spelled with a C.
Damn analysis. That's incredible, man.
Thank you. You see, you got some years on you like I do, so you remember all them Sly and the Family Stone cuts. I know you caught that.
Some of them. Some of them. But you know,
sometimes I do that poem and I realize there's a lot of, maybe some of the younger brothers and sisters don't remember all them slide cuts that I threw in there, but
man, you have such a aggression with your poetry at times, right? And like I said, the wordplay is so interesting to me. It makes you listen. There's nothing simple about it. You have to listen to every word that you say because the flow is incredible. Jeez, man. Where is your safe space? Like when you write, what is your regimen? Do you like to be outside in a quiet place, or can you just write anywhere? Where does it manifest from?
I prefer to be quiet, whether I'm sitting in my house or a friend's house or so wherever I am. Quiet works for me. You hear a lot of writers talk about such and such music that they like to play in the background to kind of get them in the groove. My buddy Dave Zirin, a phenomenal, conscious, radical left sports writer based in DC. Get anything Dave Zirin writes. All right. I'm just throwing that plug out right quick. But on his podcast, The Edge of Sports, the last question he asked his guest is, what music do you write to? And, almost every guest has some kind of music that you write to. I don't actually write to music, preferably. If I'm in a coffee house or something and it's on, then I have to try to block it out. But I don't write to music because I'll start listening to the music,
right,
instead of concentrating on my writing. So I do prefer it to be quiet. I do write onto the computer. Some folk prefer to write by hand in their poetry and then transfer it later. I just go I go straight onto the computer, cut and paste, drag and drop. Those are the best things since sliced bread, as far as I'm concerned, and just kind of construct and build the poem from there. And so I don't get poems finished very expeditiously, something that I ought to get better at. A poem might start one year and get finished another year. So, it might be a long time before a piece sees the light of day. I got 20 poems on this computer sitting here waiting for me to finish. So it might be a while before it sees the light of day. If I write a poem in 1 month, that's quick for me.
Mm-hmm.
That means I'm moving on it.
How do you memorize? How do you memorize your poetry to be able to just let it flow like that?
I think that everyone has to know how they learn.
Right.
We all learn differently. I think everybody has to know how they learn and how they memorize. Some people are very visual and need those visual clues. Some people learn other ways. For memorizing a piece like that, I have to go over it line by line. And for me, it's just rote memory. It's doing the line over and over and over and over and over again. So one line of a poem, I will need to work on that line and say it in my head and then say it through the mouth, because you can have something in your head, but you got to get into your mouth. As I say, you got to get past the physical tongue tiredness, and every line of a poem is something that I'm working on my head 40, 50, 60 times over, that one line, just to burn it into my head. And then I got to go to the next line and do the same thing. And I've got to go to the next line and do the same thing. And I've got to come back and see if I can put those 4 lines together right. And eventually I'll have made it through a stanza. Mm-hmm. And if I'm really working on a poem hard, maybe I'll get a stanza into my head in a day. Mm-hmm. And the first thing tomorrow morning, I got to do that stanza to see if it actually lasted overnight, and let that overnight, almost like crock pot, let that stew for a minute, let it seep in, do that stanza first thing in the morning before I start working on the next stanza. And the same thing, I got to do that next line 40, 50, 60 times. And it's just it's a grinding process that is going to take a couple weeks for a poem that size. But it does offer me a sense of fulfillment to go through the process, and when it's done, to be able to come back through that piece and see if it's in my head and see if it's in my mouth. And I'm still not done, because then I got to do it in front of somebody. Mm-hmm. You can do it to yourself driving in the car, and that's one thing. But until you call one of your crew on the phone and say, I'm about to, I don't know if we can curse on here. I'm about to F it up.
This is art.
Yeah, all right. So you got to have your crew that you say, y'all, you know what this is. I'm calling you so I can fuck this poem up and tighten it up and straighten it out. Right. And you got to you got to do it in front of a couple people, because there's just something about the body having to do that and the mind having to do that and the adrenaline and the nerves and whatever. And you do it in front of a couple people. And then when I'm ready to take it to the stage, preferably it's a laid back venue, like one of your home venues where you comfortable. Don't do it at a major performance. Don't do it when you're getting paid to do a show, or if you in a major slam and you trying to get through a round. Don't do a brand new poem. That you got to get it tight first, with some venues that you're comfortable in before you can say, okay, I can go perform this at such and such a feature or such and such a slam,
Right. That's interesting, because I do that sometimes. I love to go to open mics in Baltimore. I wish there was one every single night that I could go to. But I love to go to the open mics, and it's when I write something, sometimes I try it out at some of the open mics, sort of like how a comedian writes jokes. They may go to the joke house in that time. So let me try this and see how, see what I get. See if people are receptive to it. Do you ever have like bad nerves or get nervous when you
Fortunately, at this point, I'm able to channel that energy positively. Now, there's still energy. The adrenaline starts kicking without question. And you know, you could very easily slip into a rut, a bad channel with that energy kicking, and you know, and I'm not sure I have the strongest and most stable of minds, you know, you've ever met anyway. So it's easy for my twisted mind to just fall off or you know, lose concentration or what have you. Sometimes you're up there and you have this surreal experience. It's almost like you're looking at yourself. And I have a bad habit sometimes. If I make one mistake, if I make a mistake here, then there's a real possibility of my making another mistake here because my mind is upset at this mistake here.
Damn, yeah.
So I can very easily derail myself with one mistake. And I have to watch, I have to guard against that and fight that. If I make one mistake, it takes a lot of concentration for me to let it go and keep going, you know, with the rest of the poem. So, you know, yeah, I can get derailed. But I get derailed less now. Let's put it that way. So I try to channel that energy positively, but yeah, you still feel the energy, you know, before you do something, especially depending on what type of thing it is. If it's just, you know, if it's your laid back home venue where you are every week and they know you and whatever. But if it's a slam or if it's a something major that you're featuring in or oh my God, so and so's in the audience, you know, and I want to do this poem right in front of them, you know, that type of thing can get into your head also, and you have to tell yourself, relax, you're good, you know how to do the damn thing, no matter that so and so is in the audience. Don't worry about them listening to you. This is between you and you doing your damn thing and connecting with all of the audience, you know.
Who's your who's your favorite poets? Like who would you say is your, I'll say top three. Who would you say is your top three poets that you like of all time?
I'm going to disclaim the entire question, because if I name 3, I need to name 30, and if I name 3 and don't disclaim, then I'm gonna get in trouble with the other 27. And so, you know, we're blessed that we have so many phenomenal poets. I mean, poets that I call friends and colleagues, you know, on the scene today that I just, you know, I'm very humbled to call poetic colleagues. And some are very well known and some are less known. You know, certainly the name 13 of Nazareth strikes immediate respect all up and down the DMV area, in the spoken word scene and beyond. 13 is a dear brother who lives in Alexandria, Virginia, and you will hear many people describe him as the poet's poet. He's somebody you ought to, if you have not had an opportunity to bring him onto the show, you certainly should. Very humble and very insightful and wise brother, and it comes through in his poetry. I personally am a fan of the poetry of someone who is a very dear friend and my partner in poetry adventures, if you will. She goes by the name Simply Sherry. She heads up a thing called Simply Poetic Entertainment that you heard in my bio. And I really encourage folk to check out her poetry of just dealing with life as a Black woman in this country, and not only the fun of her love and erotic pieces, but also dealing with overcoming depression and being a survivor, you know, and just making it through life. And we could go on down the list. You got to talk about Stacey Ann Chin. You got to talk about all of my Baltimore fam, you know, nationally, internationally known spoken word family, you know, Kenneth Something, Black Chakra, Lady Breon, Mecca, Duke the Root, you know, Grimm, all of these people, Slangston Hughes, you know, the whole Baltimore fam. All right. and so much of and the DC fam also. So I mean, we're very rich in this DMV area, and then again, that's before you even talk about the rest of the area, where you talk about my dear friend up in Troy, New York, D. Collin, who ought to be on the show. Is another person for you to bring in the show. Where you talk about Qualo up in New York. You talk about Jamal St. John in New Jersey. And shout out to the ancestors and to the ones going on too. Shout out to what Langston Hughes did with his poetry and what he did with his life, in terms of the justice issues. Again, shout out to so many of those, who are our ancestors in poetry. So, I'll cut it there. We don't even have time. As soon as the show's over, I'm gonna be like, damn, I can't believe I didn't say, oh shit. If somebody listens to this and they hear I didn't mention them, they're gonna be like, I thought we rolled like that.
Right.
There's 10, 15 more people to talk about. Teresa the Songbird, you got to talk about, et cetera, et al.
So what is what's your favorite poem that you like to spit analysis most of the time? Like if you go to a venue and you don't know anybody there, what poem would you do?
That's an interesting question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question before in an interview. I often, in that situation, will do the Selling of Souls, which you just heard. I think sometimes you choosing a poem either for an open mic or a feature, especially for a featured set, is very interesting. You're looking at, as you say, who knows you and who has heard you or who hasn't. What is the crowd? What's the type of crowd, the demographic, and so forth. But I very often, if it's just one thing, I said, let me just go ahead and kind of introduce myself with one thing. Very often it's the Selling of Souls. If I want to go in even harder and really fuck with people's emotions and minds and what have you, I'll do Recruitment, which is kind of my critique of United States imperialism and militarism. And that's a very trigger warnings across the board for that particular piece. And so I know if I'm doing it, I'm taking people somewhere emotionally. But sometimes I'll do that. Or you may walk into a venue, say, it's time to go on the fun side, time to go with a little love piece or flirtatious piece or something or another. Right. So it really depends, on the situation, and depends on what people are feeling.
I would love to hear that poem you was just talking about, Recruitment. If you could do that, I would love to hear that.
We can certainly do that. And again, for your listeners, this might take you a few places, especially if you identify with some of the experiences that I am talking about in this particular piece. So self-care, if you need to, turn volume down for a second or two, self-care, certainly for all listeners. And tell me, when you kill her, what will it feel like? Will you delight in the touch of your finger against the trigger that dispatches death to one designated discardable due to her presence in an enemy combatant zone? Will you sense the softness of her skin as it's severed by your 762? Or tune yourself to the intonation of her aorta torn asunder, calling into question the caliber of your character as you chamber another round of red, white, and blues for an oppressed people to moan? In your fervor to hunt her husband and persecute her parents as you do what your boss has taught you, will you use the lessons offered down in Georgia at the school of torture? Will you gorge her or maybe torture her in her village because she had the misfortune of looking like this mysterious thing called the enemy? Or will you just fly the drones that terrorize towns and make for the stuff of nightmares as everyday folk shudder at the everyday chance of fire falling from the nighttime skies? And what of the children? What of their Nighttime cries as their terrorized minds try to understand why another friend dies, why they grow up having to hide, when it will all end, when they will be next. When you rape her, what will it sound like? With the soul-chilling screams of her soul being snatched as your spoils of war stay with you long after your unit has moved on. Will you wonder if she'll be able to move on from the freedom the great Western saviors assaulted her with, or how long it will take her to wash off the stench of your occupation? Is this part of the protecting? When you grab all you can and ride roughshod over God's other children, what of her children? Will your violations give volition to the violence they'll commit trying to process terrible shit done? PTSD piercing their sanity deeply, as it will yours. Exactly whose voices do you think they'll listen to next? Those that groan in uninvited enjoyment of their mothers and aunts, or those that whisper into their ear that they have nothing left to lose, so they might as well run kilos or strap 20 sticks to themselves and take as many out of this fucked up life with them as they can? You on that shit, ain't you? That drug of patriotism, boosted by lack of opportunity and laced with the lure of adventure. As if you get to enlist in some real-life PlayStation, you feel it's your call of duty to strong-arm countries for your superiors. Sensing something is sour about the situation, still you stick to your Assassin's Creed, only to discover that the medal of your honor is sorely tested by the less than honorable role this country plays on the world stage. Thus, you find yourself in the company of heroes whose actions got staged by the system. You see, this is real life. You don't get any extra lives, just extra lives and extra ties to the gears of war, but this modern warfare can shred your soul into splinter cells, leaving you wondering how you lost your halo as you look back over the marred battlefield your life has become. You're so eager to put yourself at risk, like a little plastic piece on a board game. The board's a game for you to tame the market, so they roll the dice with your sacrifice and make sound nice the dicier parts of this life. Also, you can go and make the world safe for democracy. Or rather, safe for undemocratic regimes and corporate interests that don't work corporately with the people's interests. This liberation you bring them is paid for with high interest. I'm interested in knowing if any of this caught your interest, or were you uninterested in knowing, refusing to take a closer look at the ground truth before you hit the ground running. Yours, not the reason why. Yours, but to do. A die coming up sixes for the ruler's tricks and snake eyes for your spirit's serenity. You say, it won't happen to me. And when it does, you can say you were simply following orders to aim high, and you did. Shooting low the hopes and dreams of people across the globe. So now you're a global force for good or for bad. You decided to be all you could be in the employ of the empire. And now you're searching for the things that made it all worthwhile and finding them few. The proud moments rare. Over there, you'll handle million-dollar machinery, but the machine back home doesn't handle you with trust, so it's a bust. You can return home to be on the front lines for your family's food assistance. I hope you don't return home cutting lines or wheeling in line at the VA looking for spare parts. Indeed, I just hope you return home. Look, I don't claim to have easy answers or a job in my pocket. Guess you figure there ain't much hiring. School ain't firing on all cylinders, so you say, why not? That's what they're counting on. People of color and poor whites to give up the fight and give themselves up to fight. Right. I know we all have service people in our families. We love them very much. We very much love for them not to be taken away from our families or to take others from theirs. I'm aware some of my own support branches down from the branches and from the making of arms, but that doesn't mean I can treat this at arm's length. So I'm arming you with ammo to make an informed decision before you choose to be uniformed into uniformity. This military industrial complex is making life complex. So at the risk of your being vexed, I offer questions you must consider before you consider the taking of others' lives or possibly your own. Will you own your path or merely march down one on orders to disorder another's? Young brother, I'm not trying to run your life or cause unnecessary strife, but I'm just wondering, when you beat her, what will she cry like? Will she shout shrieks of terror, shocked that the man she wedded is now wedded to embedding his fist in her, your bedding now a battleground brought home? Or, in hushed trembling, will she stream the slow, steady, almost quiet tears of a woman quietly resigned to this new prison of a life? Her personal Guantanamo, where she's force-fed fear, seasoned with memories of what used to be that keep her caged in a deranged domestic detainment. A part of you died over there, and you try to drink away the damnable parts that didn't, but all you cause is dread in a domicile where happiness is dead. Will you remember your happiness when you first knew you loved her? Her smile when you blew your first kiss? Now your blows don't miss. You've blown your bliss, shelled all of this into a shell of what you had back then. Son, what of your children? Will your son learn from you how to disable an opponent, even one dearly beloved? He'll want to grow up and be in the strike force like daddy. Will he strike with force like daddy? And he shells upon a woman he'll reduce to a shell? Will your daughter be shell-shocked into shelving her sense of self-worth and succumb to the hell some similarly sick bastard will sentence her to? Salute the God within before you salute the gods of war. And think on these things before you sign on the dotted line, just above the perforation of your soul from its peace.
Damn analysis. Shit, man. Oh. Man, I love the way you put the Call of Duty, like the video game war games in it. That, man, come on, man. Wow.
I appreciate that.
Damn.
It's probably one of the favorite stanzas I've ever written, that particular stanza.
What, during the pandemic when it was really at its height, I did a lot of writing in that time, a lot of writing and just reflecting and just meditation, really. What did you do in that time? How did you get through that time that we were dealing with, as far as being an artist like you are?
I was an online mic addict for quite a few months, for much or most of last year. Man, I was fiending for online mics. I would find out where the online mic was, wherever I could find in the world. Because for us as performing artists generally, and certainly in the poetry world, the silver lining on such a dark cloud was, to me, the fact that it brought us together globally. So as venue hosts took their things online, myself included, as people took their things online and created new things online, created new venues that were online venues on Zoom, on Instagram, on Google Hangout, whatever the case may be. All of a sudden now it was opportunity to meet and perform with poets and perform for venues that we didn't have an opportunity for because we didn't have plane money to Australia or South Africa, just to be bopping around. Now all of a sudden, there's a slam in Wellington, New Zealand. Let me get in. And I lift that up specifically because there is a venue based in Wellington hosted by Rick the Most, Poetry at Your Place, that it's a series that is both open mic. It's an open mic some weeks and a slam other weeks. And that's part of my family. I'm family down there with them now. And it really is like that. We were talking earlier about, you have your home venues. Well, now in this online lifestyle, some of my home venues and some of my, poetry safe spaces and hangouts are in other countries, because we've been able to connect with each other online. And so I would be in quote unquote New Zealand and Australia and England and Lebanon and the Netherlands and bopping around, of course, the US and Canada and what have you, to various places and meeting folk. I mean, there are poets now that I consider so much part of the extended fam. I forget that I actually haven't met them in person because I feel like I know them so well just, for the past year and a half of being online. And so that really, really helped me. Now I've slowed down, let's say in the months since then, let's say this year, I've slowed down online. I'm not always, every day looking for the online mic and that type of thing. But that really was the thing that helped me as a poet and a person last year, was just connecting with everybody in the poetry world online.
That's beautiful, man. I do that on I found out about Clubhouse in the early part of the year. and I love it. That's something I go on quite often. And you meet people
I need to
all
play
over
with
the
that. A
world.
couple of people have tried to get me in, and I need to sit down and play with this one.
Yeah, check it out, man. You'll love it. You know what I mean? You'll probably wind up having your own room, hosting your own room for people to come in, you know what I mean, and listen to your poetry. Um, you know, also too, man, your voice, you got like a have you ever narrated anything too?
I used to be in radio long. Well, let me put it this way. Part of my communications training was in radio.
Okay. Okay.
Way back in undergrad days. Shout out to WWIN in Baltimore for those that most of your listeners are Baltimore. I had the opportunity, this will date me, way back in the days of Michael Moreniel and Lee Cross and Harold Pompey and J.B. Brown and all of those folk. I had the opportunity to spend some time with them and spend the summer on air with them, and that was part of it was a really good experience. Michael Moreniel and my father, grew up together. They know each other from back in the day, so had the opportunity to connect with them, and that was part of my communications training for undergrads. I majored in comm at American, and just other experiences in terms of being a secondary educator in the 90s and being in ministry, former national denominational staff in ministry. And as a part of that, being able to travel and speak around the country and internationally and what have you.
Do you teach as well?
Not right now. I used to. I mean, I spent a few years subbing at Milford Mill High School. Those of you that know Baltimore County schools. And then for most of the 90s, I did college and career planning in Baltimore schools and Baltimore City schools. I was with a group called College Bound. And then when I was a minister on national staff for the United Church of Christ, I was working a lot with youth and young adults and youth young adult workers. And so I was directly engaged with young people in that sense. And I've always really enjoyed working and engaging with young people. I had the opportunity to serve on the board of Do More Baltimore for a number of years when I came back to Maryland in 2012. And I'm sure many of your listeners are familiar with Do More Baltimore, a dynamic organization working with young people in the Baltimore area through the poetic arts and especially vis-a-vis consciousness and community engagement. And so I'm part of the Do More fam and get to interact with such awesomely, overwhelmingly talented and dynamic young people, through that venue, through that means.
Right.
Education is a part of my I'm looking at the portrait on the dining room, ball over there. My grandmother was a career elementary school educator. If there's anybody listening that went to Charles Carrollton Public School 139, that's where my grandmother taught. My father is a doctor of African American history. So, education is, and et cetera, with the rest of the family. So education is in the family. Wow.
Yeah. So I that makes sense. I can hear that in your poetry. You know what I mean? Definitely. Can you give us one more before we get out of here? We're getting short of time. I mean, I wish I had 2 hours to have you on because the
time went quickly, man. The time went so quickly,
man.
We got so much stuff to talk about that we won't have time to get to, but I will we'll take it in another direction to close up with. But I will say before we start in that poem that I've so enjoyed rapping with you, and I really hope that not only people touch base with my book, and we didn't even talk about my album, so I really should remind people that the album is out now.
Yes.
And it's called A Couple Thousand Years Later, and you can find it on Bandcamp, just released a week and a half ago. And you'll see something like that when you go to Bandcamp. Man, I got to step up my game. I'm supposed to have my big board and the poster and whatnot behind me. I got to go get that printed. But and if you go to Bandcamp, look up A Couple Thousand Years Later, by Analysis. That'll bring you to it. Available for download. 14 poems on the album, including the ones we've done tonight. And I think people really enjoy it, and I want people's feedback. Let me know what you think and how you're able to use it. So check that out. And follow me at Analysis the Poet on Twitter, IG, Facebook. And holler at me. Give me a message. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know how you enjoyed the poems. Let me know what we can do together, be it my coming out to speak for university or organization or workshop and all of that. AnalysisThePoet@gmail.com. Let us end by taking it in a different direction, and we'll have some fun with this. And this is also on the album.
Okay.
Laura dreams of locks, and I dream of Laura. Locked onto her aura, I'm guided to her spirit like stars leading me through the Rift Valley. In my mind, there's no rift, and yea, though I walk through the valley of missing her, I fear not. For I sense her as I breathe in her strawberry-scented hugs brought hither to me on highland breezes. She is my Queen of Scots. The very thought of her makes me merry, and in the scene of lots of smiles because she shares her cheery disposition even when times are tough. Clearly, my position is that I can't get enough of her, for she holds my interest in rapt attention like ancient Hibernian lore harnessing my heart's imagination. Laura dreams of locks, a natural new adventure for her already enticing natural curls, which naturally entice me to curl her into me as we lay peacefully on the Linlithgow hill, lacked by a Lamu sun. Still, sweetly surreal, yet still so real that it reels my soul across the waters as if summoned to an intimate diasporic dinner for two. And so she has me wanting to go north, see her for the first time. Again. Atlantic indicates not the distance between us as much as the depths of my passions for her. Thus, my passions traverse the depths that I might tear down Hadrian's wall just so she could be with me. Feel me run my fingers through her dark sienna tresses as she nestles into me, safe from the mad world. Unlike many in this mad world, she's not locked into some train of thought in which she thinks her wonderful train of twirls ought be forgot or changed just for approval sought. She is not bought into the lie which says her beauty is determined by others. Rather, she longs to explore the range of richness in her divine diversity and divine new verses for her radiance to sing. And like the winsome song of the pipes wailing over Endorama beats, I hang on every note, trembling at all at the treble of her loveliness. I want to be the bass on which she clefs, the orchestral accompaniment to the desires of her dreams. So let the cacophony of the world be left locked out as we lock onto the peaceful rhythm of our breath. She allures me a lot with a lure that dislocked my gaze, and for days I'm locked in a daze. Together we're tethered, locked deeply in phase, so sensually in sync that I have but to think of her. For mere seconds in time and space suspend themselves as I dream of me and her, our bodies braided like twists, locked together as we lay by the lock, lost in the mist as we're lost in the midst of each other. No other cares could concern us as she coils herself around me, her legs locked about my lumbars. I lunge far into the thrill of her thirl. She thurls as I lower myself into her lowlands and lips lock on lips. Tongue sinks between hips, harboring me like the first of fourth. I feel her first, her second, her third, her fourth. She's in mirth, of course. In moans, she reports that she sails these waves and sail, then rides my rise once more, rising in a rapture that captures for her every splendid sensation she so deserves. She deserves this. As more than earned respite from the daily fight her brave heart wages for what's just and what's right. She can take flight in me to faraway places, soft massages and warm, safe spaces. There will be no traces of the tensions that hound her. Burdens will be thrown off like stones as I surround her with equatorial affection. I've no intention of cornering her in any contrived confinement. Her lust for life and love of living in her too large to let anyone lock her into binding boxes or staid stupidity. I respect her sovereign sexiness and honor her independence, even as I interlock with her inner energies in such a way that I invade not her freedom in some imperial impudence, but instead embrace her in our wide open souls as I invite her into this united kingdom. She's incredible in my sight as her incisive insight incites the eye of the ignorant, putting foolishness on lockdown as she labors for the least of these. Each morn she leaves her lair resolved to resolve wrongs in whatever way she can, rallied by the empowering roar resounding in her from the encouragement of the ancestors. Her dedication to the struggle is like milk made for the strengthening of God's children, and so she pours of herself selflessly, then returns home to spread love and safety across the savannah. She cannot do any less. She's so strong as she meets life's test, though it's hard sometimes and causes duress. I want to be her escape route from distress, from feeling locked in and feeling oppressed. May she be renewed, Lord, and ever blessed. And may her pillow be my chest. Let her release now, and let her rest, and let her dream. For Laura dreams of locks, but I dream of Laura.
Awesome, brother. Put her to sleep, huh? Awesome. Shit. There you have it, people. Analyst and poet, man. Look, y'all need to.
There you go. Analysis. You on that analyst too. Analysis.
Somewhere through the haze, make sure y'all get his book of poetry, and also a couple thousand years later. Y'all need to look for it, get it for yourself, stock and stuff it for your family. Go check him out at Red Emma's bookstore. He also has books in the store as well. As a matter of fact, when is the next poetry event at Red Emma's? Because you do host those, right?
So in February, we're going to go virtual, because Red Emma's is about to move again. We're about to come up to Waverly. All right. So we will be open at 1225 Cathedral Street, where we are now, corner of Cathedral and Preston, in Baltimore. We will be open through the holidays. All right. After the holidays, we're going to shut it down, and renovation has already started at the corner of Greenmount and 32nd. Right up there across from Waverly Market. Those that know the farmers market in Waverly, right up there. Greenmount 32nd. We bought 2 buildings. We said, you know what, let's go ahead and buy 2 buildings. And the renovations are underway now. And so the first few months of 2022, we're going to be moving and hopefully open doors in the spring. But that means that my February Red Emma's Mother Earth Poetry Vibe will be online. It'll be on Zoom. So you will see, everyone will see announcements closer to the time on that, on my social media, on Red Emma's social media, at redemmas.org website. That's going to be in the first Saturday. So that'll be the first Saturday in February, because the venue is every first Saturday of February, May, August, and November.
Gotcha.
So we'll go online for February and keep it. We'll see how we are doing, see if we're going to be in person in May or back online.
Absolutely. Man, I appreciate you coming on, brother. Analysis.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. There you go. There you go. Shout out our shade to the late Walter Rodney. We didn't even have time to talk about what's on my shirt. Many of y'all know Walter Rodney, late guy, and he's assassinated activist, black radical left activist. It means a lot to wear this shirt that I got from Dr. Patricia Rodney, his beloved widow, and her team. And may we embody that spirit in all our arts. My brother, much love, much thanks to you for being on, man. I really enjoyed talking with you.
I appreciate you, brother. I definitely have to have you on again, man, because I just don't have enough time. You have such a plethora of information. It's incredible. So I definitely have to have you on again. I appreciate
that.
You,
I'd love to.
Please be safe out here. And like I say, everybody, if you want to be blessed, you have to bless other people. You can't be blessed if you don't bless anybody else. Brother, I'll see you next time, man. Be safe out here.
You too.
Right. Okay.
Peace.